Thank you to Tom and Priyava for their continuing support of the Congress. In today's keynote, we hear from an amazing charity that has been playing a vital role in supporting mental health. Given the extraordinary circumstances our industry has faced, this is an issue close to the hearts and minds of many of our fellow VMA managers. Movember doesn't just focus on men's health either. As we will hear, there is a vital role that we all play in this space. I'm delighted to introduce our speakers today. Rachel Carr is Movember's Country Director for APAC. Rachel leads Movember's market strategy and teams across Asia Pacific, including markets spanning Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Rachel joined Movember in 2018 after relocating from London, where she headed up Stand Up to Cancer, a high-profile TV campaign in partnership with Channel 4 and Cancer Research UK. Brendan Ma is the Global Director, Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, and is responsible for overseeing Movember's global suite of mental health and suicide prevention programs. Brendan joined the organisation in May 2019 and leads a passionate program team located across Melbourne, Toronto, London and Los Angeles. Brendan is also a board member and former CEO of Are You OK? Welcome Rachel and Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that lovely intro. Gosh, it's so good to be here in person. This is actually our first in-person event that we've done through the Movember campaign. It's obviously a very big time of year for us right now, and I will never take moments like this for granted again. I think, you know, the energy that you feel from being together in person, it just can't be replicated. Technology is great, and I think in many respects has saved us over the last couple of years, but it's not an instead of, it's a as well as. And I know I'm very much speaking to the converted with this audience, and there's actually a huge connection between our two worlds. Movember is grounded in social connection. It's very much within our DNA. And we're a movement famous for the moustache, yes, and famous for championing men's health. But we're also famous for building and bringing together communities all over the world, for delivering large and small events that enable us to bring our supporters together and strike the right chord between being super fun but also having a really important meaning and purpose behind them. And our motto is actually having fun while doing good. And so for the last 18 years, we've come to rely hugely on this industry, on these incredible venues and spaces where we can bring our communities together, where we can go to where men are, to footy matches, to cricket matches, to live music events. It's a really important industry that supports our campaign, and that sense of togetherness, that sense of belonging that you all help make possible, we just couldn't live without that. It's incredibly important to organisations like Movember, and it's incredibly important to our mental health. And I think the last couple of years have really shown us all that and reminded us just how important social connection and community is. And maybe 2 years ago, we took that for granted a little bit. So I really hope that we build back together stronger than ever, and that people really cherish the moments that you all help create more than they ever did before. I want to just take a moment to talk about the reason that I mow. We all have our reasons why we mow, and I wanted to share my motivation with you all in thinking about the role of women in the men's health space. I was recently chatting to my brother, Joe, and his best mate, Nacho. They're both in their 20s. I was talking about Movember and the work that we're doing. And Nacho said, you know, I think it's a lot harder now to be a young man than it is to be a young woman. I don't think men are as liberated, and we're only just starting to ask questions about what it is to be a man. And he said he sent a bouquet of sunflowers to his 93-year-old granddad, who was doing it tough and he wanted to show some love. And he hadn't realised that his granddad had never received flowers before. His granddad received them and he cried. And Nacho said it was the first time he'd ever seen a man in his family cry. And it was a really poignant moment for him and a real realisation that there's still a long way to go. And it all really comes down to old-fashioned expectations. And we all have a role to play in breaking down those norms and reducing stigma. These old, stale, confining ideas of what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman, they just need to be put in the bin because they're hurting us. And a lot of the problems that we're trying to address at Movember in helping men live happier, healthier lives and have a positive impact on their health are problems caused by very old, rigid ideas about what it is to be a man. Bottling up worries and fears, toughing things out, this idea that men have to be super manly, it's all just so ingrained in society. I think about lockdown and my partner's experience of lockdown, and I received lots of love and support from friends and family. Every week I would get some flowers or scented candles or bath salts or sprays to cleanse my aura in the post from family members, all wanting to show some love. And my partner David, he received slabs of beer, bottles of whiskey, face masks, socks. And don't get me wrong, we were both very grateful for the gifts and the thought, but why do the men only get the practical things, the things that really send a message to tough it out? And it's because since forever, society has told us that that's what men need to do. They need to toughen up, they need to bury their emotions. Women have spent the last century reinventing ourselves and rejecting what women are supposed to be, and I just don't think men have had that revolution yet. I think about my nephew Teddy. He's 6 years old. He tells you when he's sad, he cries in public, he tells you when he's in pain, when he's scared, he tells us he loves us every day. And I don't want that to change. I want him to continue to be open with his feelings. I want him to know that he can talk to people and ask for help all through his adult life. And I really believe that Movember and our community have the power to lead the way and encourage men to open up and not man up. I want to build a future where men, like my nephew Teddy, can all have the chance to live happy and healthy lives, where they can ask for help and support without any fear of rejection or judgment. And that's why I mow. That's why a lot of us mow at Movember. And so today we're going to share a bit more about the work that we do, about the importance of the role that we can all play, and some tips as well to support everybody's mental health. But before that, I would like to hand over to my esteemed colleague and friend, Brendan, who's going to share a little bit about his journey and experience in the global mental health space at Movember. Over to you.
Thank you, Rach. It's so nice to see Rach. We haven't seen each other for, I think, 9 months.
Yes.
In physical proximity. I live on the south coast of New South Wales, which I suppose is one of those opportunities that COVID has afforded us to rethink how we work. So my wife and I moved down there about 12 months ago, and before that I was in Canberra. And what I found really interesting when I was in Canberra and Melbourne was in lockdown, all my Melbourne colleagues would say, "Gee, you're lucky you're living in Canberra." Said no one ever before COVID. So, it's great to see you, Rach. We are an organisation that, particularly our Australian office, which Rach leads. We're like a family. We get a lot out of being around each other. It's almost like we have to reacquaint again. It's so good to be on this journey and pathway out of this pandemic. It's going to look very, very good in the rear vision mirror. But I think the road's going to be bumpy out of this. There's no doubt about that. And fewer industries have been as impacted as much as the industry that you're in. So I want to acknowledge the impact that it has had on you, your staff and your clients. As leaders, it's hard. I'm sure there's been many nights where you've been, staring at the ceiling at 3 o'clock when our brains aren't logical, thinking about how you're going to keep people paid and employed, and when this thing's going to be behind us. So I think we're getting there, and I hope we can be optimistic about what the future holds. Look, thank you for the opportunity to share, I guess, a quick overview of what we're achieving at Movember in a mental health and suicide prevention context. A very tough issue. I've been working in the space for 15 years. I was with Lifeline Australia for 7 years, a crisis support organisation, which you'd all be aware of in Australia. And then I had the great privilege of leading Are You OK for 6 years as CEO before stepping into this amazing role at Movember. And now, having this extraordinary opportunity to be able to direct our efforts in keeping more men and boys on the planet and hopefully stopping them from dying too young, and that's very true of all of our cause areas. I think it's important to acknowledge those of us in this room with lived experience of mental ill health and suicide. The role of those who have experience, and 1 in 2 of us in our lifetime will experience mental ill health, and 1 in 5 Australians are experiencing mental ill health right now. So the experience of lived experience in shaping and influencing what Movember does and how we work is really important in influencing where we direct our efforts so that we can really achieve better outcomes for the community. As I said, mental ill health is something that we may experience in life, but life challenges our mental wellbeing and resilience every day. We might lose our job. We have a relationship breakdown. Someone dies. We get sick. We're bent out of shape and we just don't know why. Life happens to all of us, and our capacity to bounce back is so often dependent on the social supports that we have around us, our friends, our family, our colleagues, our own literacy about how do we access help, how do I understand when things aren't quite right for me and in people around me. These are the important things that Movember are really focusing on. And most of us find a way through with self-help, professional support, the support of friends and family, but unfortunately far too many people leave us before they're meant to. And across the globe, we will experience the impacts of mental ill health to a very large extent. It is indeed one of the biggest challenges of our time. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing. We have this incredible 1 month a year that raises in excess of $100 million from the community across many countries, and we have this enormous privilege of being able to mobilise that support into impact and keeping more men and boys safe from suicide, and also obviously our other cause areas of prostate cancer and testicular cancer. What we're going to do today, Rach?
Oh yes, we are. We're going to share a little bit more about our impact, which Brendan's going to take us through, and we're also going to help share how you can support somebody who might be doing it tough, and also how we can also look after ourselves through that as well. And talk a little bit more about self-care. And there will be a little bit of interaction, and we would love for you all to join in, because this is our first in-person event. So we really want to make the most of the opportunity. So we would love to see you get involved. Sometimes, though, our content, it can draw on unexpected emotions. So I just want to preface that up front and let you know that amongst that we will be sharing some tips on how to handle that content as well.
I think a Qantas ad can draw unexpected emotions.
At the moment, it definitely can for me while I can't get home.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about the Mo's impact. So 18 years ago, and there's variations on this story, but Luke Slattery and Travis Garone, two of Movember's founders, were sitting in a pub in Fitzroy having a beer. And legend has it that they saw a guy walking across the street supporting a much better moustache than I'm attempting to grow here. It was one of those old handlebar type moustaches. And they had a bit of a chuckle about, and a conversation about how there was a lot of focus on women's health, the pink ribbon movement we'd be very familiar with. But there was nothing really out there for men. And the Mo had kind of gone out of fashion. No one was growing Mo's. So what Trav now says started off as a little bit of a practical joke has ultimately turned into the biggest men's health charity in the world. And it's an extraordinary story, and it's an extraordinary story which is homegrown right here in Melbourne.
And I think that's what makes it so special as well, in that it's very much been a grassroots, community-orientated campaign from the get-go. And that, I think that's what makes Movember so special, is that we're very much led by our community. We call ourselves the roadies to our rock stars. That's how we support our community.
And the numbers are extraordinary. $600 million invested in prostate cancer, biomedical research, clinical quality registries, digital health tools to help men on their journey to recovery and survivorship, and a huge amount in prevention work as well. Testicular cancer, a fairly rare cancer, but the most common cancer in young men. And we know that if you get to prostate cancer and testicular cancer early, the prognosis and the chance of survival is greatly enhanced. And the area that I lead, mental health and suicide prevention. So we've invested almost $1 billion, and there's a whole range of health promotion efforts across these three cause areas. And what I love about some of our work in prostate cancer, for instance, Movember will fund biomedical research where Big Pharma won't, because there's not a commercial outcome. So rare cancers, and some of this work is now starting to be, to be realised into medications for rare cancers and keeping, more men alive, which is what we're here for. From a mental health and suicide prevention perspective, 15 years, and I always find this a very challenging subject to talk about. Suicide in Australia is disproportionately impacts men. It's a leading cause of death for men under the age of 44 in Australia. So it's a major challenge. And we, again, profoundly difficult numbers to get your head around, and we're talking about people. 500,000 men and boys take their lives every year across the world. So it's a really complex psychosocial issue, suicide, and there's lots of people working in the space, lots of amazing academics, and the government really has lifted its focus. There's an office for suicide prevention that sits directly under the Prime Minister in Australia. And we've got a long way to go. We know that as an issue, it's highly complex. It's not always related to mental ill health. There's a lot of things that can contribute to somebody thinking that suicide is an option. Relationship breakdown, substance use, physical health, job, money, legal, bad decisions. There's a whole range of things. And we do know that it's not something that Movember can single-handedly seek to address. It's a whole of community effort, and certainly the work that we do in trying to mobilise community to better support the people, the men and boys as help givers, is really, really important. The role of community in steering and on-ramping our loved ones and people we care about to taking positive steps towards good mental health is a really important part of our work. So people often ask, where does Movember play? And if you think about this sort of care pyramid, so the pointy end of the pyramid being acute psychiatric care, lifeline, 000, I need help now. The middle part of the triangle is psychiatric services, primary care and mental health, community mental health services. Movember plays at the bottom end of the pyramid, so informal community care, self-care, early intervention, education and health promotion. So if you like, we're doing our job well if we're investing in initiatives that keep men and boys out of the pointy end. Because if your crisis is kind of manifesting over there and you're heading towards it, hopefully, you come into contact with one of our programs and it just changes the trajectory for you because you've got more skills, you've got more awareness, and you miss that crisis. The closer you are to that, that's when our other services have a more important role to play. It's also referred to as kind of upstream versus downstream, so giving men and boys the flotation devices to and the equipment to navigate the rapids, instead of continually pulling them out of the rough water, which is where a large focus of government funding and efforts tends to go towards, and rightly so. At Movember, we focus a lot on strengthening connection. So we know that connection and belongingness is a major protective factor, and it's very, very good for our mental health if we're part of something. As guys get older, and I'm sure the men in the room will agree, I mean, I'm a 44-year-old man, we're not as good at keeping that social scaffolding in place as the girls are. We've got to work hard, and we know that loneliness and isolation can be very bad for us. So Movember is very, very focused on encouraging and providing opportunities to strengthen those connections, so that we have that scaffolding around us when times get tough and also when times are good. We focus a lot on teaching coping and problem-solving skills. So we've got some amazing digital mental health tools, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. And they're free and they're amazing. So we'll encourage you to to go and check those out in your own time and share them with with your friends and your colleagues and your family. I want to share a quick, because I'm talking a lot and I need a drink of water. I want to share a quick snapshot of our work in mental health. We do work across the globe, and this is mainly some of the programs that we fund through community around a whole range of things: social innovation and connection, training, surf therapy. We'll let the video speak for itself. Thank you so much.
Is that yours?
What we want to do is just throw out something positive to the younger kids. Don't feel like you've got to be ashamed of anything that's happening at home or in the streets.
Change can come through these programs, and I've seen it change lives.
1, 2, double jab. 1, 2, double jab.
These are socially isolated young men. This is a program about friendship. It's about connecting people. It's about supporting each other through tough times, because that's really what we're here for.
Programs like Photo Voice allow a group of veterans to work together to solve their own problems.
They said that this is the way that we do things in the military. We plan a mission, and then we do that mission together.
Guys can't go up to each other and say, you know what, man, I'm lonely. You fancy being a mate? You fancy going to the pub with me? Guys can't do that. Why? Why can't they do it? Because there's a stigma around it. There's no stigma coming here. Anybody is welcome at Pike.
There are so many guys in Australia that are struggling alone. They're not having conversations, they're not reaching out saying that I need help. This program with Waves of Wellness is about being able to normalise the fact that we all go through really shit times in life, so let's just have a yarn about them. And in the meantime, let's go surfing.
For a population of about 1,000, we expect 5 young people to die every year from suicide. The best way for us to heal is that we need to heal ourselves. So on the land-based program, the young men and boys, they grew up with a well-known hunter, learn how to live off the land, they learn the culture. These guys are alive. I'm really grateful.
Movember Foundation is changing the game for us.
I think the most important thing is actually the hope that this brings.
We're changing lives, we're changing attitudes, we're helping men.
And we often focus a lot on the young generation, and there's a quick clip to show you all how we're preparing the next generation of young men.
All right, thank you, Brendan, for sharing all of the great work that's happening. I hope you found that interesting, and it's just a really good summary of all of the great efforts that are happening around the globe right now, be that from our fundraisers or from the people that are actually funding the work and delivering these awesome programs. We're just going to spend a little bit of time now thinking about our own well-being and the people around us. So this is the bit where we would love a little bit of interaction, but all you have to do is put your hands up, so that you don't have to talk, don't worry. We'd just like you to raise your hand as we pose some questions to you that we'd just love you to think about. So I'll kick us off. So raise your hand if over the past 12 months you've picked up a new hobby. That's a really easy one to start with. Have you picked up a new hobby? Yes, a few hand raises there. Brendan, have you picked up a new hobby?
I'm cooking a lot, and my new hobby is trying to fit into clothes that I've kind of outgrown during COVID. Yeah. How about you?
Does watching Netflix box sets count?
Yep.
No? Okay, yes.
Absolutely.
No, I've also done a lot of cooking as well. I find it very therapeutic, and I've definitely got better over lockdown.
Hands up if you picked up any bad habits over the last 12 months. Yep. Does anyone want to shout? Shout out?
Eating a lot.
Eating a lot? Yeah, good call. Yeah. Yeah. Not 100%. Yep. Not saying 100%.
I think as well, missing out on that incidental movement that you just naturally get when you commute into work and out and about. Raise your hand if you talk a good game with your friends when it comes to self-care, but you don't always play a good game yourself.
I think we can all relate to that. It's called the plumber's kitchen, isn't it? You tell everyone else, what we should be doing for our own well-being, but our own sort of kitchen's a bit of a nightmare, perhaps. But it's always important, I think, to try and exercise a little bit of certainly what we promote in our work.
That's right. That's the thing that I think I found the most challenging in the last 2 years, is that we spend a lot of time promoting self-care and healthy well-being to our staff and, of course, to our supporters as well. So it does often bring into question, am I walking the walk here? Am I doing what I'm telling everybody else to do? I think it's really important.
Raise your hand if in the last month or so you've checked in on someone you've been worried about. Yeah. Yep. 100%. And the cues have been, a little bit more challenging, I think, to find in COVID, particularly when you haven't had that physical interaction. But we'll talk a little bit about, some of the signs and how we can get around someone who we might be concerned about, because, often it's hard to find those words or know where to start.
Yeah. Raise your hand if you found it hard to listen without judgment or distraction when you have engaged in those conversations.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest learnings for me working at Movember is that sometimes the worst thing you can do is just go straight in there with advice. The best thing to start with is to listen and to create space for somebody doing it tough to have a good open conversation and build from there rather than going straight in with advice.
Solutions, yeah, a fixed list of things that people must do in order to get on top of their situation can actually put someone who's struggling under more pressure. Always finding a way for that person to find that next step for themselves is a really valuable tool, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. Hands up if in the last month or so if you feel comfortable doing so, if you felt lonely, disconnected or overwhelmed. Yeah. Yeah. Life's happening for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, and that constant hum of anxiety and uncertainty, I mean, it is inevitably going to have an impact on all of us. And I personally have found that I've been a lot more exhausted, and it's emotional exhaustion. You really do carry the weight of it, I think, and you don't really recognise that as obviously as physical exhaustion. Raise your hand if in the last month or so you've had the courage to reach out to a friend to tell them that things aren't going so great. That's great to see. Really.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Raise your hand if you're already feeling overwhelmed with a busy social calendar after coming out of lockdown.
I'm raising 2 hands.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess more a reflective question, but when we do that exercise, people often tell us, it's good to see other hands going up because everyone's got little spot fires going on, and life's happening all around us. And I think those kind of exercises just remind us that we're not alone. We've all got stuff happening, and some of us and many of us are tuned in to the people around us as well. So thank you very much for that. I want to talk a little bit about Movember Conversations. I'm conscious of time, and I want to respect everyone's time. Movember Conversations is an interactive digital conversation simulator. Often, the things that stop us from reaching out to someone we're worried about is fear and stigma. So Movember actually worked with Are You OK? And adopted their conversation framework globally: ask, listen, encourage action, and check in. And this particular simulator focuses on a range of scenarios that are keeping men awake at night at the moment. Juggling work and family, worried about finances, relationship challenges, that kind of stuff. And it's really it's a really great tool. It's freely available, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure style conversation guide, really. So I'd encourage you all to, and I'll share a QR code and obviously the details following up this conference as well. But we're often asked, when should I be worried about someone? It's usually when we see a change in someone's behaviour, so they're just not quite themselves. And I'll share a bit of content which will give you some of the indicators that someone might be ready for a conversation. I'm not going to go through the Movember Conversations tool because the whole idea of it is hopefully that the community will interact with it. It's a globally accessible conversation simulator and it's doing great things. So really encourage you to jump on there and have a play. I guess one of the important takeouts of signs is an observation is a hugely valuable part of starting a conversation. It enables us to dig a little bit deeper. The old question of, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Really? You haven't been returning my calls. It's not like you. You haven't been turning up to drinks on Friday. You're always the first one there. You just don't seem yourself. That observation is a really, really important focal point in starting that conversation. And you'll see some good tips in this tool. We often encourage people to make sure that we're in the right headspace ourselves when we're reaching out to support someone we're worried about, make sure that we've got the right time, and if we're not the right person, maybe alert someone close to them to see whether they're able to check in on someone we're worried about. Denial. You know, as I said, observation is always an opportunity to help support your reason for concern. And there's nothing worse than someone asking you, you know, are you okay, when you are, but they're insisting that you're not. Maybe they don't want to talk to you, maybe it's too personal, maybe it's the wrong time. So I'd really encourage you to get on and have a play with that tool. Our other one I want to share with you for those in the room who are parents or know of parents with kids with behavioural difficulties between the ages of about 2 and 10, we developed this amazing online digital learning product called Family Man, and it's a parenting tool built with dads in mind. And it's the outcomes of this are amazing. It's proven to work. There's a range of strategies on how to manage challenging behaviour with kids. And catch your kids out for doing the right thing instead of the wrong thing. And this has grown out of a big research project that Movember funded many years ago at the University of Sydney through a guy called Professor Mark Dadds, believe it or not, that's his name. He's the leading subject matter expert. And I'll just show you a little bit about how we draw men into this tool. It's got about 50% men, male and female engagement at the moment. Most parenting programs engage about 80% females, 20% men. So we're getting guys into this, and it's delivering great stuff for people who are getting involved.
Dial it, Dad. What's your emergency?
Okay, tell her lying is wrong, and that if she comes clean, she'll get a pony.
1 second. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So I just gotta let it load.
Parenting is about having presents. Yeah, gifts.
Okay, 1 second. Oh, damn, I hung up on him.
Please hold. No, please hold onto the child.
I think I'm a pretty good dad. No matter what my son says, I think I do a good job.
What does your son say?
He says I'm no good.
Non, Madame Martine. Voulez-vous l'aide du flics? I fear there's nothing left we can do. You might just have to try bribery.
Sort of brings us towards the end of our... There's more, but I think we need to respect time, and I'd really encourage you to jump onto Movember.com and interact with some of those tools. If you know of any parents who are, you know, having a few challenges with their kids, point them in the direction of this tool, Family Man. We're doing a lot more amazing work. We're about to start a pilot or design a pilot in Australia. Internally, we're calling it Men Building Better Relationships, and it's an upstream skills building, social emotional learning tool for men to better navigate relationships. You know, be active participants in decision making, de-escalate conflict. All of the efforts around relationship breakdown happen, you know, once the relationship's in trouble, and so we're going to get in front of that, and you know, hopefully better equip the next generation of men to, you know, to navigate the complexity of relationships with a little bit more confidence.
Thank you.
Rach.
And just, I mean, if there's one thing we can just leave you with in closing this Movember, just take a moment to check in with a mate that is doing it tough, or that you might think is doing it tough. Starting a conversation really can make a world of difference. So that is our kind of core message through the month of Movember. Yes, we want people to get involved and help raise funds to fund our work, but really we want to keep that conversation going and support each other. Thank you.